A millionaire CEO disguises herself as a maid to test her fiancé's wealthy family and is met with bitter scorn. But when the truth is revealed, not only does the family change, but her relationship with her fiancé is on the brink of collapse. Why does she risk it all? What makes an entire upper-class family look at themselves? Discover a journey of conflict, compassion, and redemption in this heartwarming tale. Welcome to Morality Stories, where we explore profound stories that celebrate timeless moral values. Each story not only teaches valuable lessons, but also inspires compassion and life-changing experiences. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our inspiring journeys. Amelia Rivers sat silently by the plane window, her eyes fixed on the endless expanse of the Arizona desert. The sky was clear, but her mind was dark, weighed down by the thoughts that had been tormenting her for weeks. At 34, she was the CEO of a pioneering technology company, Radiant Solutions, admired for her sharp leadership and innovative vision. Yet beneath her confident and strong exterior, Amelia felt lost, as if she were constantly struggling to find a way between the successful woman she was today and the girl who grew up poor. A relationship with Luke Carter, a talented and dedicated lawyer, brings Amelia a happiness she never thought she deserved. But along with happiness comes a lingering insecurity. Although Luke treats her with tenderness and respect, Amelia can't help but wonder, does he really know her? Does he know the hardships she's been through, the long nights without enough food, the dreams that seem so far away? More importantly, what will his family, a wealthy and traditional family, think of her when they find out the truth? Those questions kept nagging her until they pushed Amelia to make a bold, even crazy decision. She would not go to the Carter family as a powerful female CEO. Instead, she would transform into an ordinary maid in the family, living among them, observing and evaluating their true values. This would not only be a way for her to discover the real Carter family, but also an opportunity for her to face her own insecurities. The plane landed at the small local airport, and Amelia began to put her plan into action. In the airport restroom, she took off her elegant business suit and replaced it with an old shirt and faded jeans. She tied her hair into a simple bun and removed her usual delicate makeup. When she looked in the mirror, the reflection in front of her made her almost unrecognizable. No longer the strong, decisive female leader, but just a simple woman blending into the crowd. As Amelia stepped out of the airport, she felt a wave of anxiety wash over her. Not only was this plan risky, it also required extreme caution. A small mistake could expose her identity, which would destroy the trust she and Luke had built. However, this was the only option she could think of to test their relationship. The taxi took her to the Carter mansion, a magnificent building set in a manicured garden. When Amelia rang the doorbell, the large doors opened, revealing Martha Carter, Luke's mother. Her eyes immediately scanned Amelia from head to toe with a cold appraisal. "Are you new?" Martha asked, not waiting for an answer before turning and walking inside, leaving Amelia standing there in a daze. The atmosphere in the mansion was overwhelming, not only because of its luxury but also because of its coldness, as if lacking the warmth of a family home. Amelia followed Martha, listening to the brief but commanding instructions. "We have clear rules," Martha said, her voice sharp. "No late arrivals, clean common areas, and limited talking to family members. Your job is to stay behind the scenes and make sure everything runs smoothly." Amelia nodded, trying to remember everything while keeping her voice low and humble. Amelia sensed the challenge of the plan from the very beginning, but Martha's questioning eyes and the cold atmosphere of the house strengthened her resolve. Amelia told herself that this was an opportunity for her to discover not only the values of the Carter family, but also for her to look back on herself. Despite the difficulties that lay ahead, she was ready to face them all. The heavy suitcase in Amelia's hand seemed insignificant compared to the pressure she felt. Martha Carter led her through the vast hallways, where every painting and crystal chandelier shone like a testament to wealth. Yet there was one thing missing: the warmth of home. Amelia tried to keep her breathing steady, telling herself that this was just an act, but each step seemed to take her deeper into an unfamiliar world. "Your room is here." Martha paused before a small door, her voice cold, simple but adequate. "Work starts tomorrow morning. I don't expect any delays." Amelia nodded, quietly entering the room. The room was small, with a single bed, an old wooden wardrobe, and a window overlooking the garden. Compared to the luxurious hotels she had stayed in, this place was modest, but Amelia knew this was part of the challenge she had set herself. She sank down onto the stiff bed, feeling the cold sheets. It was not the physical comfort, but the mental weight that made it hard to breathe. She thought of Luke, of his gentle smile, and wondered if he had ever imagined that his fiancé would be here, in his own home, unnoticed. The next morning, a steady knock on the door woke Amelia. When she opened it, a young woman with neatly tied brown hair stood before her with a gentle smile. "Hello, I'm Sophie," the girl introduced herself, her warm voice breaking the cold air Amelia had felt the day before. "I've been assigned to guide you. Would you like to start right away?" Amelia nodded, not wanting to leave a bad impression on her first day. Sophie led her through the main areas of the house, explaining each task in detail as she went. The kitchen, living room, dining room, and hallways were all to be kept spotless. Every item, from crystal glasses to expensive Persian rugs, had its own specific care instructions that Sophie carefully explained. "Martha is difficult, but if you do what she says, everything will be fine," Sophie said, her voice soft but tinged with weariness. "The most important thing is to keep it out of sight. The Carters like everything to go smoothly, as if we don't exist." Sophie's words made Amelia both sad and understanding. This was a part of society she had never directly experienced, where human worth seemed to be judged solely based on status and wealth. Amelia quickly realized that Sophie was a rare light in the house. The young girl was not only friendly, but also enthusiastically helped Amelia get used to her daily tasks. During their short breaks, they began to talk more. "Why do you work here?" Amelia asked as they cleaned up the kitchen that afternoon. Sophie smiled wryly. "It pays my bills. I used to dream of studying business administration, but it's so expensive. I'm trying to save, but I don't know when I'll have enough." Amelia was speechless. Sophie reminded her of herself as a child, an ambitious girl who was held back by circumstances. Sophie's patience and determination made Amelia feel a quiet admiration and at the same time, a desire to help. The first few days were not easy. Martha would pop in unexpectedly to inspect and criticize. "This is poor cleaning," she would say, pointing to a small spot Amelia had barely noticed. "I wish you would pay more attention." Amelia would bow her head in apology, swallowing her anger. She realized that Martha was not only difficult but also had a contemptuous attitude, regarding people like Amelia and Sophie as mere tools to be used. Richard Carter, Martha's husband, rarely intervened, but his silence was distant. He often sat reading in the living room, his eyes sweeping over Amelia as if she were part of the furniture. Meanwhile, Sophie continued to be a source of encouragement to Amelia. "Don't mind them. I'm used to it," Sophie said one time they were cleaning the dining room together. Amelia smiled faintly, but inside she felt a surge of resentment. No one deserved to be treated like that, especially someone as dedicated as Sophie. As night fell, Amelia lay in her small bed looking out the window at the night sky. She felt physically and mentally exhausted, but this was only the beginning. Her plan, though carefully planned, still brought unexpected challenges. But every time she remembers why she's doing this, to understand the true value of the Carter family and to define a future with Luke, Amelia finds the strength to continue. She knows that behind these glamorous walls, the truth is waiting to be revealed, and she's ready to face it all. In the following days, Amelia gradually got used to the rhythm of life in the Carter mansion. Her daily schedule was filled with meticulous tasks, from cleaning the polished wooden floors, taking care of the precious flower pots in the greenhouse, to arranging the dining table according to Martha's standards. But in each of these small tasks, she constantly observed and recorded everything around her, like a researcher studying an unfamiliar society. Life in the Carter family. Amelia soon discovers that the Carter family, despite its vast wealth, lacks any real cohesion. Martha controls everything from the decor to the family relationships. She exudes confidence and authority but lacks compassion. Martha's husband Richard is quiet and often absorbed in thick books on philosophy and management. He rarely interacts with Amelia or Sophie, except to be reminded of a minor mistake. Amelia noticed that although the Carter family appeared perfect on the outside, on the inside it was an empty space lacking warmth. The smiles between them were often forced, and the conversations only revolved around the interests or the family's image in the eyes of outsiders. In this stifling atmosphere, Sophie continued to be the only bright spot. The young girl not only worked hard but also had a rare optimism. During their short breaks, Sophie and Amelia often talked, and through those stories, Amelia understood more about Sophie's life. I've always wanted to study business, but it seems so far away, Sophie sighed once as they cleaned the stairs. On this salary, I can only pay rent and live a modest life. Sometimes I wonder if my dream is really worth pursuing. Amelia listened quietly, her heart sinking. Sophie reminded her of her own difficult days when she felt her dreams were too far-fetched and unrealistic. Amelia wanted to tell Sophie to keep dreaming and not give up, but she knew that words of encouragement alone would not be enough to help Sophie change her life. The more Amelia observed, the more she saw Martha's hypocrisy. One evening, while Amelia was serving tea to the guests, she heard Martha boasting about the charity projects she was involved in. "We've always believed in giving back to the community," Martha said, her diamond-studded hands clutching her teacup. "It's the responsibility of those who can afford it." Amelia bowed her head, trying to hide her bitter smile. Responsibility. If Martha truly cared about the community, could she treat Sophie and the other staff as if they didn't exist? Her words, no matter how flowery, were completely negated by her cold actions and the way she managed the house. During this time, Amelia began to pay more attention to Richard. One day, while cleaning his office, she noticed a bookshelf full of books on corporate ethics and social responsibility. The discrepancy between the theory he read and the reality of how he treated his employees bothered Amelia. Richard may have a good understanding of the concept of social justice, but he did not apply those values to his own family. Despite Martha's harshness and Richard's indifference, Amelia found comfort in Sophie. During their tea-time conversations, Sophie told Amelia about her mother, who had worked as a maid for the Carter family before being fired for daring to ask for a raise. "My mom told me that if I wanted to change my life, I had to do something different. But it's hard when I'm tied to this job every day," Sophie said, her eyes flashing with helplessness. Amelia put her hand on Sophie's shoulder, sensing the young girl's inner struggle. She knew that Sophie needed more than encouragement. She needed a door, a chance to escape her current life. Amelia's internal conflicts. As each day passes in her new role, Amelia not only discovers the Carter family but also confronts her own fears and insecurities. Living among people who value status over character, she begins to wonder if Luke is really different. He grew up in this house, shaped by values that Amelia now sees as clearly misguided. However, every time she thinks of Luke, Amelia is reminded of his kindness and sincerity. But are those qualities enough to overcome their differences? She begins to understand that this plan will not only test the Carter family, but also her own feelings for Luke. As Amelia lay down on her small bed at the end of the day, her heart felt heavier than ever. Through the eyes of a maid, she had seen a different world, one where injustice and prejudice still loomed large in every moment. But at the same time, she also realized that she could make a difference, not just for Sophie, but for everyone in this house. Amelia's daring plan begins to go beyond her initial expectations. Not only does she seek the truth, but she begins to think about how to use that truth to change the lives of those she meets. Mornings at the Carter mansion began earlier than Amelia had imagined. The alarm clock rang steadily at 5 a.m., a reminder that a new day had arrived and a series of nameless tasks awaited. She quickly got ready, put on a simple uniform, and tied her hair neatly, and began her journey to become a real maid. Amelia was assigned to take care of the dining room and the main living room, two areas that the Carter family paid special attention to. Under Sophie's guidance, she learned how to wipe each item with a soft glove to avoid scratches, and how to put each item back in its original place. "Martha likes everything perfect, even the little things," Sophie reminded as they cleaned. "If you see a plate that's a little crooked, straighten it. She can tell with just one look." Amelia smiled wryly. For the first time, she felt the pressure of the high standards and the constant scrutiny. As a CEO, she was used to making decisions and leading, but now her every move was being judged by a different set of standards. As Amelia finished her first cleaning, Martha entered the room, her eyes quickly scanning every corner. She stopped at the dining table, frowning. "This glass is still a little cloudy," Martha said, her voice cold. "I thought I made it clear that everything here had to be perfect. Did you understand?" Amelia bowed her head, feeling heat rising to her cheeks. "I'm sorry. I'll do it again." Martha didn't reply, just gave a soft hum and left the room. When she was gone, Sophie came to Amelia's side, her eyes sympathetic. "Don't mind. She's always like that. None of us can please her completely." Amelia nodded, but her insides were seething. Martha's disdain not only hurt, but it also made her realize how harsh Sophie, and the other employees faced on a daily basis. Unlike Martha, Richard rarely interacted directly with his employees, but his silence did little to ease the pressure. One afternoon, while Amelia was cleaning his office, she found Richard sitting pensively at his desk, his eyes focused on a thick book. Amelia paused when she saw the title, Corporate Ethics and Social Responsibility. The contradiction between the book and Richard's cold attitude toward his employees made her wonder. She wondered if the principles he read about were ever applied in real life. While Martha and Richard created a stifling atmosphere, Sophie brought a little light to Amelia's new life. Their brief moments of conversation were often the highlight of a tiring workday. One evening, after finishing her work, Sophie sat by the small window in the kitchen, sipping a cup of tea. Amelia came and sat beside her, feeling a rare peace. "Do you ever think about running away?" Amelia asked. Sophie smiled slightly, her eyes dreamy. "Yes, every day. But where? What? Life is not easy when you don't have a good starting point." Sophie's words troubled Amelia. She understood that feeling, because she had experienced it. But unlike Sophie, Amelia had found her way up through opportunity and constant effort. She told herself that, if possible, she would create such an opportunity for Sophie. Amelia faces not only the Carter family's demanding demands, but also her own limitations. Becoming a maid means more than just changing her appearance. It also means learning to endure criticism and contempt, something she never experienced as a CEO. Sometimes she wondered if she was pushing herself too hard, but every time she thought about why she was doing this to discover the true value of the Carter family and decide on a future with Luke, Amelia found the motivation to continue. One morning, while Amelia was cleaning the hallway, Martha suddenly called her to her room. Feeling nervous, Amelia entered the large room with antique paintings and luxurious furniture. Martha sat behind the desk, her eyes scrutinizing her. "I hear Sophie says you work hard," Martha said, her tone softer than usual. "But don't think that's going to change the way I see you. Everyone has a role to play here, and I hope you remember what yours is." Amelia nodded slightly, remaining silent. She understood that, even though Martha acknowledged her efforts, class difference was still the biggest dividing wall in this house. As the last day of work for the week passed, Amelia lay on the small bed in her room, feeling every muscle aching. These first few days had opened her eyes to a world she had never known, but at the same time it had also made her more aware of the injustices that Sophie and the other maids had to endure. Looking out the window at the pale moonlight shining on the quiet garden, Amelia silently promised herself that no matter how difficult this journey was, she would continue. Not only to understand the Carter family, but also to make a real, even small, change in the lives of people like Sophie. One fine morning, the atmosphere in the Carter mansion was as quiet as usual, broken only by the chirping of birds in the garden. Amelia was carefully cleaning the crystal collection in the dining room when the sound of the main door opening echoed through the hallway. She paused, her hands clutching the soft towel, her heart suddenly beating faster. "Luke's back," Sophie whispered excitedly as she passed. She quickly ran to the front, where Luke Carter's deep laughter echoed along with the sound of his boots on the polished wooden floor. Amelia stood still for a moment, feeling as if everything around her was moving in slow motion. She knew this day would come, but she didn't think it would happen so soon. Taking a deep breath, she quickly regained her composure and continued her work, trying not to show any emotion. As Luke entered the dining room, his eyes fell on Amelia, who was bending over arranging glasses on the table. "Good morning," he said, his voice soft. Amelia bowed slightly. "Good morning, sir," she replied, trying to keep her voice casual. Luke paused, a look of surprise in his eyes. "Have we met somewhere before?" he asked, tilting his head as if trying to remember something. Amelia felt her heart clench, but she quickly hid it. "No, sir. I probably just have a common face." Luke smiled, but the doubt was still evident in his eyes. "Really? I guess I rarely forget someone's face," he said and walked away, leaving Amelia feeling both relieved and worried. Luke's presence brought a breath of fresh air to the otherwise cold house. He was always friendly to everyone, from the staff to the family members. During brief encounters in the kitchen or hallway, Luke would greet Amelia with a warm smile, but Amelia kept her distance, afraid that he might recognize her. One afternoon, while Amelia was watering the plants in the garden, Luke suddenly appeared. "You take good care of your plants," he said, his hands in his pockets, his eyes looking at her curiously. "Thank you, sir," Amelia replied, trying to sound as casual as possible. Luke chuckled. "I told you not to call me sir, call me Luke." Amelia nodded slightly but didn't reply. Luke looked at her for a few more seconds, as if trying to piece together the scattered pieces of a puzzle in his head. The brief conversation ended when Sophie called out to Amelia from afar, but Amelia knew that Luke's suspicions of her were growing. Luke's presence not only affected Amelia, but also changed the atmosphere in the house. Martha seemed to soften, or at least tried to appear so in front of her son. Richard, though still quiet, also participated more in family meals. However, Amelia realized that this change was only superficial. When Luke was not around, everything went back to normal. Sophie, on the other hand, was happier when Luke was home. "He's different from my parents," she told Amelia one time as they set the table. "Luke is always so polite and considerate. If it weren't for him, I would have quit my job a long time ago." Amelia smiled wryly. She wanted to believe that Luke was different, but what she saw in the Carter household made her wonder if he truly understood the injustices that went on in his own home. One evening, as Amelia was cleaning up the kitchen after dinner, Luke walked in. He leaned against the counter, his eyes fixed on her. "You look very familiar," he said, his voice serious. Amelia tried to keep her composure. "I don't think so, sir, Luke," she said, correcting her form of address as he had requested. Luke chuckled. "Maybe I'm imagining it, but if I remember, I'll let you know." He turned and walked away, leaving Amelia feeling anxious and her heart racing. Amelia knew that Luke was growing suspicious, and this could put her in danger. She told herself that she had to be more careful if she wanted to keep this secret. Luke's presence made Amelia feel even more conflicted. Part of her longed to tell him the truth, but she knew that doing so would destroy their entire plan and the trust between them. She wondered if Luke would be able to accept her after learning that she had disguised herself to test his family. Would he understand why she had done this? Amelia felt the pressure growing, but she knew that she couldn't give up halfway. As night falls, Amelia lies in bed, eyes wide open staring at the ceiling. Luke's presence has thrown everything into disarray, from her plans to the emotions she's trying to control. But more than ever, she knows she must keep going, not only to find out the truth about the Carter family, but to find out if her love with Luke can survive all of these trials. Luke's presence in the house stirred emotions Amelia had tried to hide. Every time she saw him, her heart would beat faster, not out of fear but out of a mixture of love, suspicion, and regret. These internal conflicts only deepened as Amelia witnessed more clearly the injustice of the house where Luke had grown up. One morning, while Sophie and Amelia were cleaning the living room, Sophie suddenly told them about her mother, Clara, who had worked as a maid for the Carter family for many years. Sophie said with regret in her eyes, "My mother used to work here, but she was fired because she dared to ask for a raise after 10 years of working without a break." Sophie said, her voice low. "Martha not only refused, but said that if she didn't accept it, she could easily find someone else." Amelia was silent, listening to every word. The story made her angry, not only at Martha's treatment but also at the indifference of Richard, a man who should have understood social responsibility from the books he often read. Amelia looked at Sophie, sensing the pain and helplessness the young girl carried. "Your mother didn't deserve this," she whispered, her hand touching Sophie's shoulder in comfort. When Luke is at home, Martha appears busy with social gatherings, trying to maintain the image of a noble and charitable woman. But when Luke is not around, she returns to her true self, harsh and cold. One afternoon, Martha discovered a chipped crystal glass in the cupboard and without hesitation scolded Amelia right in front of Sophie. "Do you know how much this glass is worth? Such carelessness is unacceptable." Amelia bowed her head in apology, but her heart was seething. This was not just a reproach, but a manifestation of power imposed on those who could not resist. Luke and Amelia's frequent interactions made him increasingly suspicious. One evening, while Amelia was preparing tea for the family, Luke walked into the kitchen and stood still, watching her. "I've been thinking a lot," he said, his voice low. "You're not like the others here. There's something very special about you." Amelia paused, feeling the air in the room grow heavier. She turned back, giving a small smile to hide her tension. "You flatter me. I was just trying to do my job well." Luke chuckled, but his eyes were filled with curiosity. "I will find out," he said and left the kitchen, leaving Amelia in a state of both worry and confusion. At a dinner party the Carter family hosts, Amelia witnesses Martha bragging to the guests about her charitable activities. "We have always believed in helping those in need. It is our way of showing our social responsibility," Martha said, her tone sweet but fake. Amelia had to keep herself from laughing at the obvious contradiction between her words and actions. She couldn't understand how someone could boast about charity while treating her employees like they were invisible. After the party, Amelia and Sophie cleaned up in silence. When the work was almost done, Amelia sat down next to Sophie and broke the silence. "Sophie, have you ever thought about pursuing your dreams? Studying business administration, maybe?" Amelia asked, her eyes soft. Sophie smiled slightly, but there was a hint of helplessness in that smile. "I would love to, but it's not easy. I have no money, no time, and no one to support me." Amelia looked at Sophie, her heart filled with an urge. She told herself that somehow she had to help Sophie see that her dream wasn't impossible. With each passing day, Amelia felt more and more pressured. Luke's suspicion, Martha's oppression, and Sophie's helplessness made her feel her responsibility was greater than ever. She wondered if she was doing the right thing by keeping the truth from Luke. But if she told him, would he understand why she was doing this? Or would he feel betrayed? Those questions kept swirling around in her head, constantly surrounding her as she tried to find some peace in her mind. Amelia lay in bed staring at the dark ceiling. The conflict and pressure inside her felt like it was about to explode, but she knew she had to keep going. For Sophie, for Luke, and for herself, Amelia was determined not to stop until she found the answers she was looking for. Answers about her own love and the true value of the Carter family. Amelia had reached a point where the conflicts in her heart could no longer be contained. Every day at the Carter mansion was a test of not only her endurance but also her patience. Every suspicious look from Luke, every hypocritical word from Martha, and every helpless story from Sophie made her feel like she was shouldering a heavier responsibility than she had originally planned. One quiet evening, when Sophie and Amelia were cleaning the kitchen, Sophie suddenly asked, "Amelia, can I ask you something? Why are you here? You are different from the others. I feel like you don't belong here." Amelia paused, feeling the air in the kitchen freeze. Sophie's sincere gaze made it harder for her to hide. She considered, then decided to reveal only part of the truth. "I have my reasons, Sophie. Sometimes to understand a person or a family, I think I have to stand in the shoes of those around them," Amelia said, her voice soft. Sophie didn't ask further, but her knowing look was a silent encouragement. Amelia knew she had to act soon before things got out of control. A few days later, Luke found Amelia in the garden while she was tending the rose beds. He walked over, his sharp eyes watching her, as if he was scrutinizing her every move. "Who are you, Amelia?" Luke asked bluntly, his voice full of seriousness. Amelia felt her heart stop for a moment. She tried to keep calm, but the look in Luke's eyes told her that he was deeply suspicious. "I don't understand," Amelia replied, her voice trying to stay calm. "Stop pretending. The way you talk, the way you act, all of it is not like a normal maid. There is something you are hiding." Amelia took a deep breath. She knew she couldn't keep it from him any longer. "Do you want the truth? I'll tell you when the time is right, but not now." Luke stared at her, but he didn't press. He just nodded and turned away, leaving Amelia with a worried expression. That evening, at a family dinner, Amelia decided it was time to face it. Martha, Richard, Luke, and a few other guests were chatting animatedly. Amelia walked into the dining room, put down the tea tray, and took a deep breath. "I need to talk," she began, her voice clear and decisive. All eyes were on her. Martha frowned, annoyed. "What? Can't you see we're busy?" Amelia took a step forward, her eyes determined. "I am not who you think I am. My name is Amelia Rivers. I am the CEO of Radiant Solutions, and I am here to get to know this family." A deadly silence fell over the room. Martha stood up, her face in disbelief. "What are you saying? Is this a joke?" Luke was also surprised, but he didn't say anything. His eyes just stared at Amelia, waiting for an answer. Martha was so angry she could barely speak. "You dare disguise yourself and break into my house. Who do you think you are?" she shouted. Richard, though quiet, could not hide his shock. "Why did you do this?" Amelia kept her composure, but her eyes were sharp. "I need to know the truth." I need to understand the family I might be within the future, and the way you treat those around you speaks volumes. Luke, at this moment, finally spoke up. Amelia, why didn't you tell me? Do you think I'm not honest enough to face the truth? Amelia turned to Luke, her eyes softening. I'm not only doing this to test your family, but also to confront my own insecurities. I don't want to make any decisions without knowing what I'm getting into. After a moment of silence, Richard was the first to speak. We need time to process what you just said. Amelia nodded, accepting the offer. But she knew that this revelation changed everything. The Carters would have to face the values they held dear, and Luke would have to decide whether he could accept her reasons and her ways. That night, Amelia sat alone in her room, feeling the tension in the air. She knew that, no matter how difficult it was, she had chosen the right path. It was time to face the truth and wait to see if the Carter family could change. The morning after Amelia revealed her identity, the atmosphere in the Carter mansion became heavier than ever. Martha did not say a word, her eyes filled with anger whenever she saw Amelia. Richard locked himself in his office, avoiding all conversation. And Luke, who had always been friendly and open, was now pensive, almost distant. Amelia knew that the truth she had just revealed had created a huge rift in this family. In the afternoon, Luke found Amelia in the garden where she was sitting alone. He walked slowly, his face solemn, his eyes still filled with many unpredictable emotions. Amelia, Luke said, his voice calm but heavy. Can you explain further? Why do you feel the need to do this? Amelia took a deep breath, preparing herself for what she was about to say. Luke, I know this may seem like a betrayal, but I don't mean to hurt you. I need to understand your family, the world I'm entering if we continue. But more importantly, I need to face my own insecurities. I want to know if our love can overcome our differences. Luke looked at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of anger and disappointment. You think this will help you understand me better? Don't you trust that I'll be honest with you if you ask me directly? Amelia bowed her head, feeling heavy in her heart. It's not that I don't trust you, it's that I'm afraid of myself. I'm afraid that our differences will hurt us both. I need to see how you and your family treat others to understand you more deeply. Luke was silent for a long time. Finally, he said only one sentence, I need time to think. Then he left, leaving Amelia with an empty feeling. While Luke left to think, Martha and Richard reacted differently. Martha was completely unable to accept this incident. What right do you think you have to judge my family? Martha said to Amelia when she met her in the hallway. You lied to us from the beginning. That is not the way a trustworthy person acts. Amelia didn't respond with anger but kept her composure. Mrs. Martha, I'm not here to judge. I just want to understand how your family really works. If that hurts your feelings, I'm sorry, but I don't regret what I did. Richard, on the other hand, though also shocked, remained calm. One evening, he invited Amelia into his office for a private conversation. I don't agree with what you did, but I understand your reasons, he said, his eyes losing their usual coldness. You did what no one else did. You faced what we've always avoided. Amelia felt somewhat relieved, but she knew that this conversation was only the beginning. Richard, while somewhat understanding, was still an unpredictable person. While the Carter family is turned upside down by the truth, Sophie finds motivation in Amelia's actions. One morning, she comes to find Amelia in the kitchen, her eyes brighter than ever. Amelia, I've been thinking a lot, Sophie said. What you did, even though it was risky, made me realize that I have the right to pursue my dreams. I don't want to be stuck here forever. Amelia smiled. Sophie, you have more potential than you think. I will help you in any way I can. Amelia's words were not just encouragement, but a promise. She knew that supporting Sophie was part of her journey to redemption, not because she had done anything wrong, but because she wanted to make a real difference. Over the next few days, Luke slowly opens up to the truth Amelia reveals. He begins to observe his family more closely, noticing things he previously overlooked. One evening he went to see Amelia, his eyes less intense this time. I've been thinking, Luke said, his voice low. You were right when you said my family needed to change. I'm not sure I can accept the way you've done it, but I can't deny that you've helped me see things more clearly. Amelia felt a glimmer of hope. Luke, all I want is for us to get through these trials together. I don't expect you or your family to change completely, but I hope you understand why I have to. Luke nodded. I understand. but you have to give me more time." Amelia lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. She knew it wasn't over, yet the changes in the Carter household were just beginning, and her relationship with Luke still needed rebuilding. But she also knew she had done the right thing. In Amelia's heart, a small ray of hope still exists, that love and determination can overcome any obstacle, even when it comes from the biggest differences between two people. In the days after Amelia's revelation, the atmosphere at the Carter mansion remains tense, but something begins to change. The Carter family, once caught up in anger and shock, now faces an undeniable truth. They need to look at themselves. Amelia didn't leave right away. She knew that if she wanted to make a real difference, she would need to be patient and put in a little more effort. And her presence, while uncomfortable for some, was a catalyst for change in this family. One morning, Martha called Amelia into her study. In contrast to her usual cold demeanor, Martha seemed more pensive this time. "Miss Amelia," Martha began, her eyes still proud but her tone less sharp. "I've thought a lot about what you said. I don't like the way you came here and lied to us, but I can't deny that you pointed out things we never wanted to face." Amelia nodded, keeping her voice calm. "I don't do this to insult your family. I just want to help people see the dark side that wealth sometimes makes us forget." Martha was silent for a moment, as if struggling with herself. Finally, she said, "Maybe I was too hard on Sophie and everyone else before. I'll think about how to change." Amelia recognized this as a small but meaningful step. While Martha had not completely changed, her admission of her shortcomings was an important start. Richard, who rarely showed emotion, also began to change in his own way. One afternoon, as Amelia was passing by his office, he called her over. "Miss Amelia," Richard said, his eyes staring into space. "I've read a lot about business ethics, but I realize I've never applied them to this very house. I always thought I was a fair person, but maybe I was wrong." Amelia could hear the sincerity in his voice. "Awareness is the first step to change," she said softly. "We can all do better if we are willing to listen and act." Richard nodded, as if he were making a promise to himself. "I'm going to start with my own company. I think it's time to change the way we treat our employees." Amelia did not forget her promise to Sophie. One evening, she gave Sophie a small envelope. "Here's a little help from you," Amelia said as Sophie opened the envelope, which contained some money and a form to enroll in an online business course. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. "You don't have to do this. I don't want to bother you." Amelia took Sophie's hand, her eyes filled with encouragement. "You're not bothering me. You're someone who deserves help. I believe you'll do great things." Sophie hugged Amelia, emotion evident on her face. For the first time in years, Sophie felt real hope for a better future. During this time, Luke also gradually changed his view of his family. One evening, he sat with Amelia on the porch, both of them looking out at the quiet garden. "I talked to Mom and Dad," Luke said. "I think they're starting to understand that the way they've been living has to change. But I also realize that I'm also guilty of not noticing these things sooner." Amelia took his hand. "The important thing is that you realize it and are willing to change. It's never too late." Luke smiled, his eyes warm for the first time in days. "Thank you for helping me see things clearly, even if your way was a little unique." They both laughed, the tension between them seemingly melting away. This was the first moment Luke and Amelia felt like they could overcome any challenge ahead together. The change in the Carter family was not immediate, but the first signs were there. Martha became actively involved in charitable activities rather than just for show. Richard began holding meetings at the company to listen to the opinions of employees. Sophie, with Amelia's support, begins a business course. Every evening she sits at the kitchen table, diligently taking notes and dreaming of a new future. Amelia, looking at these small but significant changes, felt a deep satisfaction. She knew that her journey was not over, but what she had done had left a clear mark on this house. On the last evening before leaving, Amelia stood in the garden, looking at the warm light coming from the villa. She felt a sense of peace in her heart, as if the burden she had been carrying since coming here had gradually been let go. Even though things aren't perfect, Amelia knows that the Carter family has changed. Sophie has had the chance to start a new journey, and her relationship with Luke has strengthened. She smiled. This was just the beginning. The morning at the Carter house was different. Sunlight filtered through the trees, illuminating the garden where Sophie was busy taking notes with a notebook and pen. On the small kitchen table, the old laptop Amelia had given her was streaming a lecture on business management. Sophie is no longer just a maid trapped by circumstances. Her eyes are brighter, more confident, as if every day brings a new ray of hope. Amelia, from the first day she promised to help Sophie, has been constantly looking for ways to facilitate the young girl. With financial support and sincere advice, Amelia ensures that Sophie has enough resource to pursue her dreams. "I don't want you to just study for a degree," Amelia said one evening as they sat together in the kitchen. "I want you to believe that you can do anything. This is the first step, but it will lead to so many opportunities." Sophie nodded, her eyes sparkling with conviction. "I can't thank you enough. Not only did you give me a chance, you gave me the confidence that I deserved it." Amelia smiled, rubbing Sophie's shoulder. "You don't need to thank me. Just keep trying and live the life you want. That's what matters most." Despite her motivation, Sophie did not avoid initial difficulties. The online lectures were sometimes too complex, and Sophie struggled to understand financial and management concepts. One evening, Sophie slumped over her desk, her eyes filled with worry. "I don't think I can do this," she told Amelia, her voice filled with despair. Amelia placed her hand on Sophie's shoulder, her voice gentle but firm. "No one said this would be easy. But if you give up now, you'll never know how far you could have gone. You've made it through some tough times here. This is just another challenge you'll conquer." Sophie looked at Amelia, feeling a surge of strength. She took a deep breath, turning back to her notebook. "You're right. I won't give up." Small changes in the Carter family also contributed to Sophie's journey. Richard, after talking to Amelia, decided to fund a small scholarship so that Sophie could pursue a full-time degree after completing her online course. "I've been thinking a lot," Richard told Sophie one evening over dinner. "You deserve a chance to grow, and I want to help." Martha, though still holding on to some of her pride, began to change. She suggested that Sophie take on lighter work so that she would have more time to study. "You may not believe it, but I really want you to succeed," Martha said, a hint of confusion in her eyes. "If you prove yourself capable, it will also be a source of pride for this family." Sophie felt surprised but also filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Miss Carter. I will do my best." After a few weeks, Sophie gradually got used to the rhythm of studying and working. She started to apply what she learned in practice, trying to calculate costs and manage her time more effectively. One day, Sophie shared her dream with Amelia. "I want to open a small cafe where people feel welcome and comfortable, a place where I can manage and create jobs for people like me before." Amelia smiled, proud of the girl before her. "I believe you can do it. And when you need help, I will always be here." One fine evening, the Carter and Amelia families gathered in the living room to celebrate Sophie's first achievement. She completed an online course with excellent grades. Luke stood up and raised his glass to toast. "This is proof that with determination and the right support, anyone can achieve their dreams. Sophie, we are proud of you." Sophie smiled brightly, her eyes filled with emotion. "Thank you, everyone. I couldn't have done it without all of your support." As the evening drew to a close, Sophie sat alone on the porch, gazing up at the starry sky. Her heart was filled with joy and hope. Amelia walked over and sat down next to Sophie. "This is just the beginning," she said, her eyes looking far away. "Your future will be so much brighter." Sophie smiled back. "I won't let you down." The two sat in silence, sharing a peaceful yet meaningful moment. This was not only Sophie's achievement, but also a testament to the change Amelia had helped create in this house. The changes in the Carter mansion did not happen immediately, but as the days passed, positive signs began to appear. Amelia stayed at the mansion for a short time to witness this transformation, and she felt satisfied to see the Carter family gradually change. Martha gets involved in real charity. Martha Carter, who had once used charity as a means to enhance her personal image, now began to engage in activities with more sincerity. One day, she unexpectedly invited Amelia and Sophie to join her in a fundraiser at a women's support center. "I used to think that charity was only for the rich," Martha said as the three of them sorted through the gift bags. "But I guess I was wrong. There are a lot of people who need real help, not just for publicity." Amelia looked at Martha, sensing the change in her tone. "Miss Carter, your being here today is a big step. It's the actions that matter, not just the words. Martha nodded slightly, her eyes filled with thought. That afternoon, as she handed out the gifts to the needy women, a rare smile appeared on her face, a smile that came from sincerity. Richard reforms within the company. Richard, with guidance from Amelia and inspiration from Sophie's journey, begins to reform within his company. He holds meetings with his subordinates to listen to their opinions, something he has never done before. In a meeting, Richard told all employees, "I realize that social responsibility is not just a concept on paper. We need to do more to support our employees, not only at work but also in their lives." Amelia attended the meeting as an advisor and felt proud to see Richard making a real effort to make changes. New policies were introduced, from fair pay increases to supporting training programs for employees. "I didn't think Mr. Carter could change so quickly," one staffer whispered to Amelia after the meeting. "But it just goes to show that anyone can do better if they're willing." Luke and Amelia rebuild their relationship. While the Carter family changes, Luke and Amelia also take time to mend their relationship. One evening, as the two sit in the garden, where they once had tense conversations, Luke takes Amelia's hand, his voice filled with emotion. "Amelia, I can't deny that the way you did things initially made me uncomfortable. But now, I understand that you did everything out of love and sincerity. I'm not only grateful to you, but also proud of you." Amelia smiled, her eyes soft. "I don't want to hurt you, Luke. I just want to make sure our love is strong enough to overcome any challenge." Luke pulled her close, a smile on his face. "We will get through this together. I believe in it." Sophie becomes a symbol of hope. During this time, Sophie's journey becomes an inspiration not only to the Carter family but also to the people working in the mansion. The other maids see her efforts and success and begin to think about pursuing their own dreams. Sophie began sharing her story in small gatherings where she talked about her journey from a maid to a budding business student. "It doesn't matter where you start. What matters is whether you dare to dream and work hard to achieve it," she said at a meeting. Her words were met with an inspiring round of applause. The changes didn't stop there. Martha began inviting Sophie to charity events, treating her as a partner rather than an employee. Richard expanded the company's support policies, creating scholarship programs for employees' children. Amelia, though no longer staying at the mansion regularly, kept a close eye on these developments. She knew that real change would take time, but the first steps showed that the Carter family was on the right track. One peaceful evening, Amelia stood on the porch, looking into the mansion where warm yellow light shone through the windows. She saw Martha and Richard chatting with Sophie in the living room, while Luke stood beside her, smiling at her through the glass. Amelia smiled. This is proof that even people and places that seem unchangeable can be transformed with enough motivation, love, and sincerity. She told herself that even though this journey was almost over, its effects would last forever. A few months after the positive changes began to take root in the Carter household, Amelia and Luke decided to have a small ceremony to celebrate their relationship and the progress everyone had made. The ceremony was not only a milestone in their love, but also a chance to bring together people who had once been distant, but were now starting to get along. Amelia and Luke chose to hold their ceremony in the back garden of the Carter house, where many of their memories had taken place. Sophie, with help from Amelia, took on the role of ceremony coordinator. It was also an opportunity for her to demonstrate the management and organizational skills she had learned from her business studies. "I'm sure the ceremony will be perfect," Sophie told Amelia, her eyes shining with confidence. "I want this to be not just a special day for you and Luke, but a day when everyone feels connected." Amelia smiled, clearly sensing Sophie's maturity and determination. "I have complete faith in you. This is also your chance to shine." The garden was decorated with twinkling lights and fresh flowers, creating a warm yet solemn atmosphere. Guests included Luke and Amelia's close friends, people who used to work at the villa, and even Richard's company staff. Martha, looking radiant as ever, took on the role of welcoming the guests. Her demeanor had changed. She was now more friendly and affable. Richard, though calm as usual, joined in with surprising support and encouragement. As Amelia walked down the steps leading to the garden, her arm around Luke, the two received warm applause from everyone. The atmosphere was filled with joy and sincere affection. Amelia stood up, her eyes looking around at her loved ones present. She held a glass of wine, her voice filled with emotion. "Today is not only a special day for Luke and I, but also a day to celebrate the connection we have built. I want to thank the Carter family, Martha and Richard, for constantly striving to be better versions of ourselves." Amelia turned to Sophie, smiling proudly. "And I want to give a special thanks to Sophie, who is not only an important part of this ceremony, but also a symbol of perseverance and potential. Sophie, you have reminded us all that dreams are never too far away if we dare to reach for them." The crowd burst into applause, and Sophie could not hide her emotion. She stood up, bowed her head in thanks, her eyes glistening with tears. After Amelia's speech, it was Martha and Richard's turn to stand up. Martha, who had been cold and distant, now spoke with a sincere tone. "I have learned a lot in the past few months, not only about manners but also about the true meaning of family and responsibility. I promise that I will continue to do better, not only for my family but for those around me." Richard nodded, adding, "We hope that the changes we have begun will be a legacy for the Carter family, not because we are perfect, but because we have learned to recognize and correct our mistakes." As the ceremony continued, one of the guests, a famous investor, approached Sophie after hearing about her journey. "I heard your story from Amelia and saw great potential in you," he said. "If you need a mentor or financial support to open a coffee shop, contact me. I would love to help you make your dream come true." Sophie could hardly believe her ears. She turned to Amelia, her eyes shining. "Amelia, I don't know what to say." Amelia smiled. "You don't need to say anything. This is the result of your hard work." As the ceremony drew to a close, everyone danced together under the twinkling lights in the garden. Martha, Richard, Luke, Amelia, and even Sophie each felt connected and hopeful for a new future. Amelia, standing beside Luke, clearly felt that her challenging journey had been deeply meaningful. She had not only found true love, but also made positive changes for those around her. As the night fell, Amelia and Luke stood together, looking at the brightly lit garden where people were still laughing and talking happily. Luke held her hand tightly and whispered, "Thank you for helping me and my family see things we never noticed before." Amelia smiled, her eyes shining. "Thank you for believing in me, even when I do things that don't make sense. This is just the beginning, Luke. We have so much more to build together." The two stood there in peace and happiness, knowing that love and sincerity had gotten them through it all. As the morning light flooded the Carter mansion, everything seemed to take on a new look, brighter, more vibrant. The night of the party that brought everyone together had ended, but its echoes still lingered in every corner of the house and in everyone's heart. Amelia, standing from her room window, looking out at the garden that still had some fresh flowers from the ceremony, felt an indescribable peace. Although everyone in the Carter family, especially Luke, wished she would stay longer, Amelia knew it was time for her to return to her work and her life. On the last morning, Luke walked her to her car. His eyes were gentle but lingering. "I don't want you to go," Luke said, squeezing her hand tightly. Amelia smiled, her eyes filled with love. "I don't want to leave you either, but we both have our own paths to take. What matters is that we found each other, and we will build a future together wherever that may be." Luke nodded, gently pulling her into his arms. "I'll wait for you, Amelia. Whenever you're ready to come back, this will always be your home." While Amelia was preparing to leave, Sophie was busy with the biggest plan of her life, opening her first small cafe. With the support of Amelia and the investor she met at the ceremony, Sophie found a small space in the center of town to start her dream. Amelia went to see Sophie before leaving the mansion. They sat in the kitchen, the place that had witnessed many emotional conversations between them. "I think you're ready," Amelia said, her eyes full of pride. "Never doubt your abilities, Sophie. You've proven that you can do amazing things." Sophie smiled, her eyes sparkling. "I will never forget what you did for me, Amelia. Not only did you change my life, you helped me realize my own worth." The two hugged in an emotional moment. Sophie knew that even though Amelia was gone, she would always be her biggest support on her journey. Martha, with renewed determination, began to build deeper relationships with the people who worked in her home. She no longer viewed them as invisible, but began to listen to each person's story and needs. "We can't change the past, but we can build a better future," she declared at a family meeting. "I want everyone in this house to feel like they are part of the family." Richard, on the other hand, continues to promote fair and sustainable policies within the company. He also participates in organizing workshops to share his journey of change, inspiring other managers. Returning to work at Radiant Solutions, Amelia continued to run the company with dedication and compassion. But she and Luke kept in regular contact, discussing future plans and how they could reconcile their lives. One day, Luke visited Amelia at the office. He walked in, carrying a small bouquet of flowers and his usual smile. "Can I bother you for a moment, busy CEO?" he said teasingly. Amelia looked up from her desk smiling. As always, talented lawyer. They spent the afternoon together, sharing ideas about using their influence to create greater change, not just in their families, but in their communities. A few months later, Sophie opened her small coffee shop, Dreamer's Haven. Amelia, Luke, Martha, and Richard were all present at the opening, along with Sophie's first friends and customers. Amelia watched Sophie smile as she served her first customer and felt a surge of joy. She knew that Sophie's journey was not only a personal success story, but also a testament to the power of hope, faith, and perseverance. That evening, when everyone had left, Amelia and Luke stood on the porch of the cafe, looking at the warm lights from inside. "Do you think things will change like this?" Luke asked, his voice warm. Amelia smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "I've always believed that when people open their hearts, anything is possible. This is just the beginning, Luke. Our future and everyone's future will be much better." Under the starry sky, they stand side by side, feeling the peace they have fought for together. The story is not just about love, but also about change, compassion, and the strength to overcome the greatest of obstacles. And that's it for today, an emotional journey about compassion, forgiveness, and the human capacity to change. It reminds us that sometimes looking back at ourselves and facing the truth can create great changes. What do you think about the main character's decision to disguise herself? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your views. If you enjoyed this story, please like and share to spread the message. Don't forget to subscribe to Morality Stories for more inspiring stories. See you in the next video.